Okay, please join me in welcoming Rachel Fine, who's the Executive Director of the Yale Schwarzman Center, Kurt Glauber, Associate Partner at Robert A.M. Stern Architects, and Ken Frank, Associate Partner at Robert A.M. Stern Architects.
Sure. That's fine.
Clicker.
The clicker.
All right, you good?
I think your 72 slides are first.
All right, yes, we'll go first. All right, you want to kick us off then?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday afternoon. We have visual aids today, so stay focused. So Kurt and I are associate partners at Robert A.M. Stern Architects, RAMSA, Bob Stern's office in New York. We are the architects of record and design architects for a couple of projects here at Yale. There's the Greenberg Conference Center up Prospect Street. There's Pauli Murray and Benjamin Franklin residential colleges further down Prospect Street. And at the end of Prospect Street are the bicentennial buildings now known primarily as the Schwarzman Center. So, and Rachel, the executive director, after we show some of the history and the renovation rehabilitation project associated with it, Rachel's going to talk about the exciting stuff she's doing as the executive director of the center. So I will turn it over to you, Kurt.
Great. So just to, where am I going? So here we are just looking at an aerial map of Yale here. So the project here showing Science Hill, Hill House, Grove Street Cemetery, SOM you can see off to the right, and then Central Campus as it is today. And then the Schwarzman Center here, which is really the hinge point along Prospect Street between Science Hill and Central Campus. And then initially, when it was first developed, it was the bicentennial building built for Yale's 200th anniversary. It also was a point when Yale unified Sheffield Scientific School and Yale College. And so it was a real celebration. It was the first building they built during that. And this showing what Prospect Street looked like previously. It's obviously different today. And then here is just that image of what it was like in 1909 with Sheffield Scientific School. And then the Schwarzman Center here, now the Schwarzman Center, then the Commons, and what it was like then. Before, it predates all the colleges, which everyone really has a real understanding of Yale's campus. And here is an image of what it was presented to the Yale University for the new quadrangle. You see the original image here was actually a C-shaped concept. Ultimately, it didn't get completed that way. And here is one of the initial proposed drawings from Carrere and Hastings showing the C-shaped plan. And if you really look at it, you'll see it's as one would expect, a much larger plan initially. And then I'm sure, as all developers and everyone knows, value management happened, and ultimately it didn't get built that way exactly. And so now here is the built project in 1902, showing the Schwarzman Center from Prospect Street as it is almost today. And then here's the Hewitt quadrangle. You'll see they also did not install the colonnade, another example of value management in its day, so not a new concept that all of us have to deal with. And then here, an important part too was the Memorial Hall in the center of the project. So here showing some of the tablets as they were during the day. You know, it was the new building showcasing all the war dead from the Civil War. Showing it was the first time that they showed the Civil War dead without which side they fought on. So it's all the Yale graduates that died in the Civil War at that point. Before, in this image, before World War I even. And then here an image of the Commons as it was used back when it was originally opened. You can see a large dining space, really what it was intended for. And even then it was, you were served if you were in there as a student. You weren't actually going to a servery like we all do today. And then the rest of the Memorial Hall, on the second floor, the President's Room, you can see largely set up for event spaces as well. And then, as it's used today, you know the The colleges were invented back in the 30s, and this changed the landscape for Yale. And then as the university developed, there also was a large set of graduate schools that came along. And those two were really not joined together. So the Schwarzman Center really came along when it was gifted and became this hinge point to kind of reunify the graduate schools and then the student centers, or the colleges, and became the idea to make it a center for all of that, a student center. And it's constructed around here. There's basically three main elements: the Commons, which you saw the large dining hall, Memorial Hall, Memorial Rotunda, and then also Woolsey Hall. And then we also are looking at the lower levels. So previously Olin plan here we'll be looking at as well. So what were our design goals when we started the project? What were we told to look at? So one was just restoring the historic space. It had not been touched in a very long time, since really its initial construction. There's been no touch or renovation work of any type to it, so it was in desperate need of that. Also reinventing some existing space, so taking the lower level, which was just purely kitchen space, underutilized and in very poor shape. Then also finding the opportunity to find new space on the project. You only kind of get one shot at this. What else can we find to expand the building footprint? And then also, very important part was just integrating all the 21st technology in what these spaces could become as performance spaces. And now I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Ken, who will explain some of these detailed things.
So let's talk about restoring historic space. This is a plan of the first floor of Memorial Hall. This is the Rotunda and Memorial Gallery. So you can see before on the left an image of the original space, and then on the right the light touch that was taken in the Rotunda room, where the plaster elements were restored, the lighting was updated, and the floor was not touched. This is the Memorial Gallery. You can see a decision was made not to do any cleaning of the actual stone tablets themselves, though that was after a full investigation and tests were done. The decision ultimately was to paint the ceiling and change the lighting and restore some of the decorative lighting elements in the space. And the more dramatic intervention that was taken in this area, so most of you Yale grads know the walk from the residential colleges to, say, Science Hill or anything that's up Prospect Street. A lot of that takes place during this, right through the axis of this building. So previously there used to be just 3 steps to get up to the quadrangle level down to the Memorial Gallery level, and that was replaced with this ramp for accessible access. Expanding over to the Commons Dining Hall itself. So on the left, you'll see the before image where a lot of the food service space that's right along Grove Street was inadequate. So some of that the servery element had leaked into the dining hall space itself. There are a lot of other interventions here, like lighting and the poor performance of the existing floor, but you can see on the right the sort of after image for all of the things I'll go through in the coming slides. So this is a rendering that existed before the renovation actually started. So the existing floor was completely demolished and removed, and a new one was built in its place. There was no HVAC, there was no thermal comfort accounted for in the existing space, at least as it existed before the renovation started. So all of the paneling along the lower level there, all of that was cataloged and removed and restored off-site, and we carved out elements to create spots for ductwork and fan coil units to feed the space. The existing brick and plaster decorative elements like the cartouche and the brackets below the trusses were all restored in place. All of the lighting, the sconces, and chandeliers in the space were all also cataloged and removed and restored off-site. The ceiling itself was lightly cleaned, I'll say, and the decking, the existing decking that existed between the purlins was left in place, but it was replicated with acoustical panels. And in the interstitial space between those acoustical panels that replicate the planking is hidden conduits for all of the AV and electrical in the space, as well as sprinklers and some of the theatrical rigging. And all of the painting you see on the trusses and purlins was existing. I know a lot of people couldn't see it due to how poor the lighting and how desperate.
Cigar smoke.
Yeah, and cigar smoke from that image that you saw, all the gentlemen smoking cigars all day. Also, so integrated AV system. So I don't know anybody who took the tour last night. Actually, all the AV was down. You could see the trusses, the motorized speakers that go up and down. There are motorized shades for the windows that on the south and the north, which are two different conditions. And then I think the next slide speaks to, so this speaks to those acoustical wood panels I was talking about. The uplighting, there's also other elements for lighting in the new catwalk. So there's an existing catwalk, that's the wood one you can see running down the center of the space. Just above that is a brand new catwalk which supports a lot of the AV and infrastructure for performance, and the interstitial space in between is used as a raceway for all of the conduits for all of that stuff. And the chandeliers themselves now are motorized. They have the ability to go up and down 16 feet depending upon what event is going on in the space. There's also additional rigging in the ceiling to account for different performance types. So there's rigging for stage curtains. There's actually stuff in the floor for accommodating different points in the space for performance. And then, of course, any flexible seating arrangements associated with. So here you can see the commons, the most dramatic moment in construction. So you're actually in the basement at this point. On the floor, if you see that black band that's running around the brick, that's where the wood paneling was, and just below that is where the old floor used to be. For all of the spaces that were created below the commons itself, we actually dug down an additional 30 inches to create space in between them. And then I think I have some more images. So here's what I was talking about before. It's a little 3D graphic to show you where we carved out some of the 4-foot thick brick walls that exist in the perimeter to create little moments for fan coil units and ductwork. This is an image of the existing doors that took you into the servery space. So all of that paneling, all the wood you see is the original. The doors were replicated to match the original. Those are new. And based on the necessity to have so many people going in and out of that new servery into the existing space, we had to add more doors. But in order to be sensitive to the existing condition, we wanted to make sure that that spoke to the original wall and not just add a door for the sake of showing a door. And then here is an image from the balcony of the newly renovated and well-lit space. And the clock functions now, which it didn't for many decades. An image from the balcony, you can see some of this helps to highlight, I think when you walk through, you might not be able to see how dramatic the lighting is in really highlighting each one of these spaces, but it is very much a lighting project. And this is an image from the original, or from the dedication ceremony with Stephen Schwarzman. So each one of those trusses, those wood trusses that exist in the space, actually has rigging points or points for people to hang from. So you can see on the image on the left, it's a group called Bandaloop. They're actually hanging from the trusses. And then simultaneously, the same performance is going on down on the floor level on the right. So jumping back to Memorial Hall, we'll look at the second floor, which is the President's Room. So you saw the image that Kurt shared before, where we have where there were pilasters and the gentlemen who were serving all of the people who were eating in there. But you can see on the left here what the space looked like when the renovation started. Some interesting lighting going on in each one of the doorways. You can see the mechanical grills in the other doorway, and there was asbestos insulation on the ceilings. All of that was scraped away. On the right, you can see new mechanical grills and supply for the space, and replication of the pilasters on the wall. A lot of the detail in the ceiling was discovered after the removal of the sound insulation, and the chandelier was fully restored.
So then that also gave us the opportunity to look at reinventing some existing space. So as Ken mentioned, we excavated down 30 inches below the commons and underpinned a lot of the foundations to allow for that to happen so you can have as much width as possible. And since we restructured that whole floor on the commons, it gave us the ability to make a very open span space here in the center in the underground space, which is kind of a multi-purpose space. So here you can see what it was like before in the kitchen on the left, and then what we had envisioned and designed now on the right with an open performance space, dining space with ingle nooks as well. And here with the stage, you can see we were able to do all of that. And then additionally, the well, so that's the other part in the below Memorial Hall. And so again, that was dug out 30 inches as well and brought down lower. And you can see previously it was just a storage space covered in just a plaster work over the stone. As we excavated and did renovation work, we discovered the beautiful existing granite foundations, which we then stripped off that plaster work and highlighted it with lighting, and then wrapped the columns in some millwork inspired by the refrigerator doors that were in the existing dining space. And then here, another photo of that well space in action. I encourage you to go get a drink there. And then moving up to the top of the building, into the dome room, you can see here a kind of unknown space for most Yaleys, don't know really existed. Here's what it was like when we arrived in the space. On the left, it was partitioned off. It was the yearbook room. Lovely acoustic treatments on the dome space, which we quickly removed, renovated this into now a performance space. It has a sprung floor on it and many other features, which I can go into.
It's a white, round, black box theater.
Yeah, that's right. So exactly not a black box, but functioning like one. And so here you can see, which Rachel can go into more from the opening, that use of that space as well. And then finding new space. So I think that you were...
Yeah, the agreement was I would
Yeah.
come out. Finding new space. So there are just really two additions to the building. So there's the expansion on Grove Street, which you can see in the before and after here. So on the left is the original construction, and then on the right are modest introduction, which was inspired by an actual plan done by the original architect's career in Hastings. So this is 1906, just 5 years later, where they're doing a sketch to expand the building north onto Grove Street, and then an image of the exterior of our result of that inspired sketch. And then this is the space where the Schwarzman Center offices and some of the student meeting and gathering spaces are collected, where the original facade is now an interior wall with fire-rated and acoustically rated glass in between the commons so that it shouldn't disturb the people working in that space. And then the second addition, which is actually a basement addition underneath the quad. So I'll just go to the dramatic image. So all of the paving and seating and landscaping was all cataloged and taken off-site, and what was a plaza was turned into a roof. And underneath that is a generous corridor space and a dance rehearsal space that is meant to, dimensions are exactly what was to be expected for a stage in Commons. There's also the Bow Wow, which is a convenience store down the other corridor. And then within the quad, the only sort of intervention that's actually visible from above is the new staircase that can take you down without having to go through Memorial. And then that's it. With that, I'll turn it over to Rachel to talk about the exciting stuff they're doing in there.
There you go.
Thank you. Just remind me how much time we have.
You've got 12 minutes. We did.
12 minutes. Okay, here we go. We're going to start with a video. Okay. So I don't know if you caught it in the last slide, but we did have Paul McCartney during our first year. We also had Anderson Cooper in the space, which was very exciting. I think my mandate here is to explain a little bit about what the Schwarzman Center is now that it is open and fully activated and open not just to the Yale community, undergraduate, graduate, faculty and staff, but also the New Haven community. I have been in my job exactly 1 year and 3 days. So I just celebrated my 1 year anniversary. And when my colleagues here were talking about the dedication, that was actually last November 5th, 2022. So when we talk about being open and fully active and animated, we really have only been in full operation for 1 year. So more than anything, I think what I would want to stress is that we are a commons in the very truest sense of the word. We are right in the center of campus. We are a center for connection, cohesion, for community building. And I think already in this very short time, we are a victim of our own success. We are trying to figure out exactly how we're going to meet the demand of use and of interest in the space. So all that's to say is that the first year has been very, very exciting. We are a startup. We are a work in progress. Our team is learning as we are experimenting and exploring and as we're going along. But I think the single most important thing we've been able to do is to provide connection, human connection for everyone on campus. I was a grad student here in the mid-90s, and from my own experience, I can tell you that my department and the students in my department were very siloed. There were not many opportunities for connecting with other people and students across the campus. And I think this is in some ways the way that our donor felt as an undergraduate. If you read the first few chapters of his book when he talks about entering Yale and being an undergraduate, I think that he was lonely, and in many ways I think this was a response to that loneliness. I can't tell you how important this is post-pandemic, and we're finding just thousands of people coming through the space. I don't know what Yale Hospitality thought in terms of how many meals they would be serving a day. Commons is the main dining space, but the underground also offers dining. We have a cafe, we have a gelato bar, we have late night dining, we have a bar. We're serving 2,000 to 4,000 people a day, and that's what I mean by demand. It's also one of the largest spaces, Commons, on campus, and so it is uniquely positioned to be a wonderful event space. And most departments and schools at Yale that want to have an event, and a big event with lots of people, want to use Commons, so we're trying to figure out that demand as well. For me personally, I come from a long history of working with arts organizations, mostly in California. And prior to this job, I ran another brand new performing arts center in a historic building in Beverly Hills. It's the old Beverly Hills Post Office that was restored, repurposed, and expanded on by the architecture firm Zoltan Pali and Judith Faquette. Anyway, it's another amazing project. And wonderful in terms of the way that it allows artists to do their very, very best work. But that said, the spaces in it are relatively traditional, meaning the theaters have proscenium stages. The seating is just like this seating, fixed seating capacity that's not flexible. And I was so intrigued by this job in particular because those things are not defined in the Schwarzman Center. So what that means for an arts leader or an arts presenter is that we get to dictate so many of those things. And actually, in many, many cases, the artist gets to be a part of that conversation, and that is largely unheard of. And so if you've spent any time reading about what the media has said is the demise of the American theater, I actually don't think that's true. I think the level of engagement and the level of interest in the arts is at an all-time high. I just think people are engaging and devouring the arts in very, very different ways, and it might not be in a traditional theater setting where you have a first half, an intermission, and a second half. and that the seating is always in the same number and the same formation. So for me personally, in the Dome, for example, we get to decide if it's an emerging artist who doesn't have a following and we want to help build their career, well, maybe we only set up 50 seats. And we set them up according to how the artist wants them and how the artist wants to present the work. Well, that's highly, highly unusual. But the thing I love about it is that we're pretty certain at this point we can fill those 50 seats and that it doesn't become a marketing issue, and that the artist comes in knowing what the seating capacity is, that we've filled the seats, and that you've already achieved a certain amount of success before the performance even starts. So if you look at a big orchestra hall of 3,000 seats, well, if you do Beethoven's Fifth, you might be able to fill those seats. But if you're doing more progressive or innovative repertoire and you have unknown artists, you might only fill 350 seats in a 3,000 seat auditorium, and everybody feels disappointed and like a failure. So that's one of the really incredible things that we get to deal with. 50 seats in the Dome, 100 seats in the Dome and Commons. For some of our offerings, we have 150 seats. For others, we can have between 500 and 1,000 seats. In the underground, what you saw, again, multi-purpose, multi-use space, but if we clear out the seating, not only can we determine, do we want 100 seats or 350, but we can set them up any way that we want. So if we want to have a jazz club, we can have cocktail tables and chairs. So this kind of flexibility is, it's a real luxury. And we support pretty much every genre of performing art making and performance. And so it's been really exciting, especially with the artists coming in to have those conversations, and conversations that we typically have not had, any of us on our team, with artists before. Usually we contract an artist, they give us their tech writer, and we implement it the way the tech writer tells us to implement it. Now we have to have lengthy conversations about the tech writer because they don't, most of the time they don't make sense for our spaces. So just quickly, this is outside in Beinecke Plaza. We have activated that plaza space, and we look forward to activating it more frequently for outdoor performances.
Is the green one.
Oh, the green, I pressed the wrong green button. You'll see here, I know you already saw the staircase leading to the Beinecke Plaza, but we've actually used it as a dance space, a site-specific dance space. But most of the time people are going up and down to get to the convenience store, which is the Bow Wow. This is the rotunda. I've seen the rotunda used for a number of different things. This happened to be dance and site-specific dance, but I have walked in on numerous occasions and found all of, different Yale choral groups singing in the space. It has a really wonderful natural acoustic, and they don't check it out, they just show up and they sing in the space. Commons, as we've said, so Monday through Friday, it is a dining space. There are 4 different dining platforms, and I give a lot of praise and kudos to our colleagues in hospitality because the food is absolutely incredible. They really pride themselves on high quality, interesting international cuisine. The 4 dining platforms right now are Asian cuisine, Italian, rotisserie chicken, and then they have a vegan and vegetarian option. But I think this is part of the reason the 2,000 to 4,000 meals are being served is because the food is so good. The other thing is that the dining hours are flexible. So in the residential colleges, the dining hours are much more limited. They're much more structured. Students can eat in Commons anytime between 11 and 3, and then downstairs just about any time during the week. This is a performance that we did with the Yale Undergraduate Orchestra and the Yale Dance Lab. It was the first fully staged production of Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring. I know The Rite of Spring has been performed many times in New Haven, but not as it was originally intended with dance. And so it's our understanding that this had never been done. One of the things I love so much about this, so we built a theater inside of Commons, and we had about 5 different performances. But again, when you typically go to see The Rite of Spring fully choreographed, you have the dancers on stage and you have the orchestra in the pit. And you really can't see the orchestra. You can hear it, of course, very well. But in this iteration, in this scenario, they were on a level playing field. And what was so remarkable about it as an audience member is that you were fully immersed, not just in the performance, but the sound. And we're continuing to make discoveries about the acoustics, but the acoustics in common, in my opinion, and I'm biased, of course, but they're unparalleled. I'm hoping in the next year or two, we can get to the point where we're so confident about the acoustics that we can tell Carnegie Hall that ours are better. But they're really incredible. We've done a number of different performances in there. We had a percussion quartet and immersive light show. This had 100 musicians playing Rite of Spring. We did a dance festival. At the end of the year, we had a minimalist quartet doing a program of pure minimalism, but the acoustics are truly extraordinary. That was Bryce Dessner, who's our artist in residence, and his quartet coming in, 2 pianists and another guitarist. This actually is a private dining room that you didn't see in the last slideshow. It's at the very end of Commons, but we use it to invite artists and other figures to come in and facilitate meaningful conversations with students, faculty, and staff over food. So this is really an area where we can leverage food and the work that we do into one offering. The series is called Sessions, but every month we invite really interesting speakers to come in and facilitate these conversations. That speaker, his name is Michael Abels. He is a Los Angeles-based composer who just won the Pulitzer Prize for the opera Omar, but he happens also to have scored all of the films of Jordan Peele.
Oh, Peele, yes.
Yes, so he is, anyway, it was thrilling. He was here. He did a number of different things with us, but this was 16 people around a meal speaking with Michael. This is the Good Life Center. This is a health and wellness center. It is the second operation of the Good Life Center. The first is in Silliman College, but that is mostly reserved for undergraduates. So when the Schwarzman Center opened, they expanded to include the Good Life Center for undergraduate and graduate students. They offer all different kinds of programming, from yoga and meditation to various support groups and trainings. Anyway, it's a beautiful, very peaceful center, which also hosts a nap room, but really is meant to be a retreat for students. A lot of tech-free spaces in here as well. This is the well. And it is open tonight at 5 o'clock, so if you do want a drink, you can go get one at the well after the conference. This is the first intentionally designed dance studio. There are other dance spaces at Yale, but ultimately the Yale dance program won out in terms of claiming this space. So sprung floors, bars, mirrors. It's a beautiful space, and it's probably the space that's used most by students, faculty, and staff. They check it out like you check out a library book. We offer everything from rehearsal space, but also we do a series of master classes for students and the members of the New Haven community. This is the underground. This is the only proscenium stage, but as I said, the room in which the stage resides can be set up any number of ways, including there's a wall that comes down and can make for a much more intimate space for 100 people. So we've done everything from comedy to singing to student-led variety nights, poetry slams. That's also the underground. This was a really wonderful panel of female producers. On the right is Daryl Roth, who's one of the greatest producers on Broadway, Camilla Forbes from the Apollo Theater, and then Zibby Owens, who's a very well-known podcast producer. That's the Dome. It's been a, as you can see, we turned it into a disco for the opening. It's chamber music space. Right now we actually have a very elaborate sound installation in there with an artist named Ash Fury. We've used it as a movement space. You can see these are the dance floors that we have in that space. This is the president's room. That is the dean of Yale College, Pericles Lewis, and the head of Davenport College in conversation. He does a series in there called Dean's Dialogue. We are going to use it as a theater space for the first time. On November 9th, Long Wharf Theater is bringing one of its productions. It's an adaptation of a Joan Didion work, Year of Magical Thinking, but it's a theater piece that's going to be moving all over different places in New Haven, and the President's Room is going to be one of those places. This is downstairs. I don't know if you mentioned the fact that we have gallery space, but both outside the well and also outside of the President's Room, we have gallery space. We've not yet figured out, as I said, we're in our first year, security to hang high-end art in the way that we would like. So right now we're experimenting with a lot of different things. This is actually a vinyl exhibition that started online during the pandemic, and then we mounted it. It's there right now, actually, outside of the well. But this is again a work in progress that we look forward to figuring out in the long run. And I think that's it.
That was it. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So
now
do we do
go
questions?
to questions.
I don't know.
Yeah, Q&A.
Go back to a pretty picture.
We don't have a moderator, so we're just,
Yeah. Anyone
any
have any
questions?
questions? Sure. Over here.
I have a just real simple question. As a builder, did you do acoustic studies of the interior, since you talked about how wonderful the acoustics are in there?
Yes, we did. We did extensive studies. We had our acoustician. We have an acoustician. There was a large set of consultants, theater consultants, that helped put this whole project together. They're not here with us today, but they could talk for hours and hours about all the different elements of the systems that go into make Rachel's work so lovely. So yes, we did do that. It went from a 4-second reverb time down to a little over a second, which is what we all love.
And then following on that, fantastic job. It's just gorgeous what you all did. What was the budget for that?
Well.
I can't disclose that
Yeah.
in typical Yale fashion.
Yeah, I can disclose what the gift was because that's public information. The original lead gift from Stephen Schwarzman was $150 million. In total, he's given $162.8, but that is also operating support to sustain us during our first few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question on arts programming. So my experience as an undergrad, there are the well-established institutions, orchestra, theater, et cetera, and then undergrads putting on whatever they wanted to put on.
Yeah.
So curious from your perspective now that you're able to curate that with your various spaces, as well as bring in new voices from outside of the university, New Haven, seems like a lot nationally and internationally as well. I'd love to hear some more about that.
Okay, so I didn't quite hear a question, but I'll see if I can expand on that. So actually, we are in the midst of our very first strategic plan for programming and operations right now. We love the fact that, again, we are multi-genre, that all the spaces are multi-purpose and are very flexible spaces. So I think what we want to do, especially given how much arts activity is already on campus, is offer something because of the architecture, because of the spaces, because of the acoustics that no one else is offering. And you're right. So for example, the Yale School of Music has a wonderful, long-running quartet series, or classical music series, chamber music series. And we want to do chamber music. We certainly don't want to step on their toes. We want to take full advantage of the spaces that we have. So for example, we have a very progressive string quartet coming in December. And the work that they're doing is simply, first of all, something that would never appear on the Yale School of Music series. But it plays with a lot of different tunings, intonation, acoustics. So it is uniquely, I think, appropriate for the Dome. And we don't even know yet, because they haven't seen the Dome, how they're going to set themselves up. So quartets usually sit, two facing. We don't know if they're going to sit in the center of the room. We don't know if they're going to sit, over to the side. We don't know how they want to set up the seating. But it is the piece itself is a full-length program. And our hope is that it becomes, this is one of the things we want to capitalize on, but a full immersive experience for the people who are in that space. So not just a traditional performance, but an experience that they couldn't have in any other space. But you're right about, we're trying to find a balance between professional artists. We want to do residencies. We're commissioning new work, which is all very exciting. So the artist that is in the dome space right now has been in residence. I think I was telling you last night, she has said over and over how rare it is as an artist to have uninterrupted access to the space, have an entity investing in her work, no parameters. She's been in there creating this work for the last 2 weeks, and actually we gave her 2 weeks last year as well. And now she has the support to establish this work for the first time. And of course, we're all learning together what this is ultimately going to be. But we're hoping, with that investment, that commission, and giving her the residency here, that she will finally get to a point with this work where it can travel to other places. But we love the fact that we can be an incubator and the originator with her of the work. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about now. I mean, I think it's going to take 3 to 5 years to really establish our distinct voice. But I can't tell you how much I'm loving, just learning about the spaces. Everything we're doing for the first time. The other thing I want to add, and this is really a tribute to Steve Schwarzman and his foundation, we don't charge for anything. We do charge for food, and that's different. Yale Hospitality is a different operation, and we sort of have to exist harmoniously in the space together, and in some cases we do creative programming together. But for all of the arts presentations, they are free. Now, in order to gain access to them, you do have to be on our mailing list, and when our email news comes out, then you can register for the events. But we just had an artist, Corinne Bailey-Ray, who came through with a new album. She's incredible. She's a Grammy winner. That was free for everybody. Paul McCartney, he actually ended up being in Woolsey because we needed more than 1,000 seats, but that was also free. And we are always very careful to reserve seats for members of the New Haven community and the greater New Haven community, and also students. We invite lots of student groups in from outside of the university.
Any
Gentleman front row.
Yeah, right here. Oh.
I'm loud.
You could go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that amazing tour. With the number of places that you have available within the building, I'm sure you're in the phase where people are beginning to discover it from the arts community, and you're starting to get more and more applications for performances. How do you sort and deal with those now, and what are your plans for dealing with those challenges in the future?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I think as we start building our profile, as we have press and other forms of visibility attached to the programming that we do, we are getting many more invitations to collaborate. So again, I think through this planning process, we're trying to figure the balance, first of all, of programming that we want to have, and that how much student programming, both undergraduate and graduate students, how many professional offerings, and then there's a variety of other activity that goes on in the spaces. So I have an incredibly talented associate artistic director whose job in combination with me is to determine that programming. But that's really, her name is Jennifer Harris Newman, and she is particularly gifted when it comes to curating such programs. The nice thing is that she's really spent the bulk of her career in New York, and I have spent mine in LA, so we're sort of combining our networks and our interests, which seem to really complement one another, which is very exciting. But I think through the planning and through the parameters that were established, it's going to make it a little bit easier. Where do we have a competitive edge? So I would say dance performance in particular. So even though there are dance groups on campus, there is not a conservatory like there is the Yale School of Music for dance. So if we can bring in amazing professional dance groups, and usually when they come in, they can do a variety of different things. They can visit classes, they can do master classes, and then they can do their performances in commons. So, in terms of demand, I think first we need to be able to articulate our curatorial intent. And I think that's something we're trying to hone right now. So I think once we have that, it makes decision-making much, much easier. You're not just choosing anything and everything, but where can we really have strengths and a competitive edge, and how can we create a unique voice, essentially. I'm trying to think what else you asked. In some cases, though, we have people come to us. So as it turned out, I just want to take Paul McCartney, for example. He and his daughter, Mary McCartney, came to us and came to the development department and said, we have 2 projects. We would love to see them done at Yale. And of course, that's a moment where we want to seize that opportunity. Both projects were incredible. So Mary McCartney, his daughter, actually just produced her first documentary. It's about Abbey Road Studio. It's an incredible film, and she was going on tour with the film last fall. And so we partnered with the Yale Humanities Center, and we were able to do a pre-screening of that. It was for Disney Plus, but we were able to screen it and show it to our community students and whatnot. So in that case, they absolutely came to us. Paul McCartney has an honorary doctorate from Yale. He considers this his university. And his book that came out, which is Lyrics and Poetry, last year, I think it was very important to him that his book launch be at a scholarly university, global university. He enlisted a Pulitzer Prize-winning poet named Paul Muldoon to write the book with him. And I think if you just look at that alone, you know, he wanted it to be seen as a scholarly work. And so he asked, and we said absolutely, to launch his book tour at Yale, and it was a thrilling event. So that happens too. I just got a call from the Whitney Humanities Center yesterday saying there's an artist we want to work with. We don't have the capacity or the expertise to do music, and so I mean that's something we want to do too. We want to be able to honor some of the requests from other departments that can't produce live performance, but maybe want to integrate it into some of their offerings. So, but we're, you know, all that's to say is that it's early days, and we're really trying to figure it all out.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right.
Okay, we have one more coffee break, and then we'll reconvene for our last 2 sessions at 3:30. Thanks, everybody.